By the late 1950s, the intellectual engine of leftist political thought had ground to a halt. The global Marxist movement, once a unified framework for analyzing capitalism, had fractured into competing ideologies. The first camp was orthodox Marxism-Leninism. This Soviet-backed model relied on rigid economic determinism, asserting that every cultural, legal, and political event in a society followed the commands of its economic base. The second camp was Marxist humanism. To distance themselves from Soviet orthodoxy, Western academics focused on Marx's early writings. These were influenced by G.W.F. Hegel, a philosopher who viewed history as a progressive realization of human spirit. These humanists framed Marxism as an effort to end human alienation and achieve true liberty. Both the Stalinists and the humanists relied on the same logical error, teleology. Teleology is the unscientific assumption that a process has a predetermined destination. Both camps assumed history was naturally marching toward a socialist finish line. To prevent Marxist theory from becoming a mechanical formula or a romantic myth, the situation demanded a different philosophical foundation. That foundation was built by Louis Althusser, a philosopher teaching at the École des Mots Supérieures in Paris. Althusser set out to dismantle both dominant readings of Marx. His core accusation was that both orthodox economists and humanist academics were guilty of empiricism. In Althusser's specialized vocabulary, empiricism is the belief that objective truth can be extracted simply by observing history or human nature, assuming the essence of a thing is visible on its surface. Althusser identifies two distinct Marx, separated by an intellectual rupture in 1845. The pre-1845 Marx was an ideological thinker. His early writings remained trapped in the vocabulary of German idealism, relying on unscientific concepts like human essence and alienation. The post-1845 mature Marx, the author of Capital, was the founder of a completely different objective science, historical materialism. This science analyzed the mechanics of production without relying on concepts of human nature. By enforcing this strict timeline division, Althusser stripped Marxism of its moral humanism. He demanded it be treated as a rigorous science of social structures. This creates a unique problem. If Marx's mature work is a new science, how do we correctly read it when Marx himself didn't fully articulate his own underlying philosophical framework? Althusser proposed a method called symptomatic reading. Borrowed from psychoanalysis and the philosopher Spinoza, this technique looks for symptoms. The reader analyzes the contradictions, gaps, and unsaid background assumptions that allow the text to function. This brings us to theoretical practice. Science doesn't start with raw facts. It starts with flawed concepts he called ideological genera, like a free market. A rigorous theoretical framework burns away this ideology. The output is a refined, objective, scientific concept. True scientific knowledge is actively manufactured through rigorous theoretical labor that breaks illusions of common sense. Next, Althusser targeted orthodox Marxism's diagram, the base and superstructure model. It assumes the economy acts as a foundation, directly pushing culture and politics upward. He replaced this with overdetermination. Society is a complexly structured whole, where causality is multiple, intertwined, and uneven. In this state of overdetermination, any single historical event emerges from the combined friction of all surrounding structures. While all nodes influence each other, Althusser introduced the structure in dominance. One specific node, usually the economic, organizes the entire web's gravitational pull. This model leads to Althusser's anti-humanist maxim: history is a process without a subject. Human beings are not the authors of history. They are the physical sites where contradictory productive forces play out. By removing human agency from the center of history, Althusser created a model that explained why capitalism survives despite its internal contradictions. If history operates without a human subject, why do we experience ourselves as individuals making conscious choices? To answer this, Althusser differentiated between two methods of control. The repressive state, like the police and military, controls populations by force. But there is a second layer, ideological state apparatuses, or ISAs. Ideological state apparatuses are institutions like the family, the school system, the religious church, and the media. These organizations function to subconsciously reproduce the behaviors required by the economic structure. They achieve this through a mechanism called interpolation, or hailing. ISIS project specific subjective roles at us. Individuals unconsciously recognize themselves in these roles and step into them. This theory shifts the objectives of political action. Taking control of the state is insufficient. A revolution must dismantle the apparatuses that manufacture compliant citizens. Our sense of unique individual identity is the exact mechanism the system uses to guarantee our ongoing exploitation. The chaotic events of the May 1968 student protests in France exposed the linettes of Althusser's highly ordered structural machine. The world refused to conform to his theoretical models. Althusser began a systematic self-critique in his 1978 text, Marx and His Limits. He realized that his earlier attempt to separate a pure science of Marx was unsuccessful. He admitted that Marx never actually escaped Hegelian idealism. Concepts of human alienation and predetermined historical goals were mixed into Marx's entire life's work. Althusser abandoned the goal of an overarching theory of history that could analyze all of culture from the outside. To save the materialist core of his philosophy, Althusser dismantled the very scientific structure that made him famous. He replaced it with a final philosophy, aleatory materialism, or the materialism of the encounter. Aleatory means depending on random chance. The core claim of this late theory is absolute contingency. History has no origin point and no underlying logic guiding its path. New social worlds are born only through random encounters. Free-floating material elements drift aimlessly, and occasionally they collide and take hold, forming a new structure. Societies are temporary patterns. They possess no permanent glue, meaning they can decouple and dissolve back into the void. The theorist cannot guarantee the future. They can only analyze the contingency of the present to spot the potential for a new encounter. Without an underlying script to guarantee salvation, there is no law stating the current oppressive system must survive. The future remains unwritten, waiting for a chance collision to forge a different world.